You've seen the news conference, right? You got the cameras flashing, politicians in hard hats, all smiling next to some CEO. They just landed the big one. A giant corporation is coming to town. And the promise? Oh, it's always thousands of jobs, a booming economy. It's a billion-dollar promise. But what's the real story behind that photo op? Does that promise actually pay off for the people footing the bill? Well, that's what we're going to figure out.
I mean, it's an incredible offer, isn't it? A corporate giant shows up, promising a flood of new jobs and just a massive injection of cash into your local economy. On the surface, it seems like a total no-brainer. But we have to ask, when you weigh the promises against the price, is it really a good deal for the community?
So, to get to the bottom of this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to open up the subsidy playbook to see what's actually being offered. Then, we need to figure out how we even measure success. From there, we'll put that knowledge to the test with two huge real-world case studies, Amazon warehouses and Midwest data centers. And finally, we'll deliver the verdict. What's the real return on investment?
All right, first things first. Before we can even judge the outcome of these deals, we got to know the rules of the game. What exactly are cities and states putting on the table for these companies? Let's open up the subsidy playbook.
So think of it less like a single check and more like a whole menu of incentives. You've got property tax breaks, which means for years, sometimes decades, that shiny new building won't be paying its full share for schools or fire departments. Then there are job creation tax credits, where the government literally pays the company for each person it hires. Throw in waived sales taxes on millions in equipment, and you start to see how the public's bill really adds up.
So just how expensive are we talking here? Let's just take one company as an example. According to the watchdog group Good Jobs First, Amazon alone has received more than $11.6 billion in public subsidies. That's not million, that's billion, with a B. Okay, so when you're talking about billions of dollars, you really need a way to know if you're getting your money's worth. And that's where this idea of return on investment, or ROI, comes in. Simply put, for every dollar we give away, what do we get back? But as we're about to see, the answer to that question really depends on how you ask it. First up is fiscal ROI. This is the simple bottom line approach. It's all about the government's checkbook. Does the new tax money coming in from, say, workers' paychecks and local spending, does that actually cover the cost of the subsidies plus all the new services that facility needs, like road maintenance and emergency response? But then there's economic ROI. This is the big picture. This one asks about the broader impact on the entire community. Are we actually creating a net gain in jobs? Are local wages going up because of this? Is this deal lifting the whole local economy, or is it just kind of rearranging the deck chairs? And this right here is the crucial difference. Fiscal ROI look at the government's budget. Economic ROI looks at everybody's wallets. A deal could be a technical win for City Hall's balance sheet, but an absolute loss for the community as a whole. And this is where the debate gets really, really interesting. But maybe the most important question of them all is something called the but-for test. Think of it like this. If you have a coupon for a gallon of milk, but you were already going to buy that milk anyway, the coupon didn't actually change your behavior. It was just a discount. Well, it's the same thing here. We have to ask, but for this giant tax break, would the company have built here anyway? If the answer is yes, then that subsidy wasn't an incentive. It was just a handout. Okay, so now we have our toolkit for understanding subsidies and ROI. Let's actually apply it to something we see all over the country, the Amazon Fulfillment Center. The sales pitch for these deals is always incredibly powerful. Take Amazon. A study they commissioned claims the company is responsible for nearly 5 million jobs in the US when you factor everything in. I mean, with a number that huge, you can see why politicians are tripping over themselves to sign on the dotted line. But then you look at what the independent research says, and the picture gets a lot more complicated. A major study from the Economic Policy Institute dug into the actual county-level data, and their conclusion? While warehouse jobs do go up, the total number of jobs in the area barely budges. So what's the verdict on these warehouses? Well, it's a real mixed bag. On one hand, yeah, you might see a small bump in local wages and home values. But on the other hand, it seems like you're often just shuffling jobs around, not creating new ones. And if the wages are too low, well, then taxpayers end up subsidizing the company a second time through public assistance. And that brings us right back to that huge but-for problem. Amazon needs to be near its customers for fast shipping. So you have to wonder, would they have built there anyway? All right, now let's pivot to a totally different kind of deal.
these massive data centers popping up all over the Midwest. With these projects, the promise isn't about thousands of jobs. It's all about billions of dollars in investment. And right away, you see the fundamental trade-off. A company will promise to spend, say, $1 billion on a new facility. That creates a whole bunch of temporary construction jobs, which is great. But once the building is up and running, these high-tech fortresses are designed to be run by just a tiny skeleton crew of permanent staff. And that leads to some truly eye-popping math. According to reporting from Business Insider, the public cost to create a single long-term job in some of these data center deals has gone over $1 million. Let that sink in for a second. $1 million per job. And you know, some of the biggest costs are actually hidden. These data centers use an absolutely enormous amount of power and water. The expensive upgrades that the electrical grid needs to handle them often aren't paid for by the company, but by every other electricity customer in the area. And the deals themselves, they're often super opaque, making it almost impossible for the public to know the true cost. So we've got two very different models here, right? We've got the job-heavy warehouse and the capital-heavy data center. Let's bring them together for a final head-to-head comparison and see what we've learned about that return on investment. Let's just put them side by side. The contrast is pretty stark. Warehouses offer more jobs, but with a more moderate investment. Data centers bring that huge investment, but very few permanent jobs, which is how you get that insane cost per job number. And look at the last two rows. Data centers put a massive strain on public infrastructure, and the deals are way less transparent. It's kind of like quality versus quality, but that quality comes at an unbelievable price. So after all this, what's the final verdict on that billion-dollar promise? Well, the evidence suggests it's built on a pretty shaky foundation. The ROI for taxpayers is rarely a sure thing. That promised wave of prosperity often turns out to be more of a ripple, and the public is often left wondering if they really got what they paid for. Which brings it all back to you. The goal here wasn't to give you a simple yes or no answer, but to give you the tools to ask the right questions. So, if your town was offered one of these billion-dollar deals, what would you ask? Would you focus on the fiscal ROI for the town budget or that broader economic ROI for the whole community? And most importantly, how would you apply that crucial but-for test?